What's up, Totem Pole Nation? This is Lambo and Matt's World of Sports. I'm Matt. Lambo is out today, so we'll be getting into the Clemson recruiting class solo today. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff as always. And if you want to support the boys by getting some merch, the link is scrolling down below in the ticker. Like I mentioned, we are getting into the Clemson Tigers recruiting today. Let's get it. All right, guys. Like I said, Clemson, 16th ranked class in the country, the third in the ACC. They've got 17 commits so far, 2 5-stars, 10 4-stars, and 5 3-stars. Getting into the depth chart details of what I noticed when doing my little analysis here. They're returning top targets at wide receiver, but they clearly need to add some guys to this group. It's not all on, QB1 over there. It's he doesn't have big guys around him. He doesn't have names around him. And this is obviously one of the worst years of recent memory for Clemson, but part of that is because you've always had studs at the wide receiver spot. And I'm not shitting on the current wide receivers, but they're not like the guys of the past when it comes to Clemson standards. So that is a big emphasis I think they need to hit in this class. They're only losing 2 offensive linemen. They have depth behind them at every slot in there. They could add a quarterback, running back, tight end. None of those are really pressing issues. But it's never bad to add someone to those groups. This is the worst part. They're only returning 1 starter on defense. And obviously this is a very good defense this year. It's kind of the offense that's been struggling a little bit. We'll have to see how they adjust. The defense is losing 4 juniors in the draft. Linebackers Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., DBs Nate Wiggins and Andrew Makuba. And then they also have DTs, or defensive tackles, Rook Orahoro. Correct me in the comments if I pronounce that one wrong. And Tyler Davis, also safety RJ Mickens, will most likely be drafted as well, but those 3 were leaving regardless of the draft. So that doesn't really change anything. They're also losing 2 DNs and 2 DBs in the starting lineup as well. So they have depth at every spot, and the depth are mainly freshmen and sophomores. But like I said, losing 10 of your 11 defensive starters, I don't know if the priority is to throw in a fresh sophomore that played a few snaps this year or whatever. So, they're going to have to maybe turn it up in the transfer portal. I know Dabo's not the biggest fan, but he doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of a lot of things at the moment. But I'll leave that to y'all and the Clemson podcast to get into those issues in the program. So I'm going to start off with the top commits for Clemson, starting with Sammy Brown. He's from Jefferson High School in Jefferson, Georgia. He's a 5-star linebacker. He's 6'2", 230. He's the 12th ranked player nationally, the 2nd ranked linebacker in the country, and the 2nd ranked player from Georgia. He's an All-American, and he also plays running back. And then if that wasn't impressive for you, he's also a champion wrestler and has very impressive speed in track and field for someone of his size, 6'2", 230, and he's got wheels on him. So what a top guy on the list for Clemson that's missing a lot of their defensive guys next year. The second best linebacker in the country is a great way to start. Next up is Bryant Wesco from Midlothian High School in Midlothian, Texas. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. Midlothian is right there. So when I first saw it, I got a little excited. It's not. Midlothian High School in Midlothian, Texas. He's a 5-star wide receiver. He's 6'2", 170. He's the 21st ranked player nationally, the 5th wide receiver, and the 5th in Texas. Needs to get a little bit bigger, obviously. 6'2", 170 is pretty lanky, but that's part of every college's plan of getting freshmen in is to bulk them up. So nothing to be concerned about or anything. And then he also has great jumping stats in track and field. So he's an athlete. And like I just mentioned, they need some dogs on the outside in the wide receiver spot. And this dude's 6'2". He's a 5-star, 5th wide receiver in the country. And he's great in track and field when it comes to jumping. I'd love this wide receiver to open up this offense, which obviously needs it. Next up is another wide receiver from Florida. His name is TJ Moore. He's from Tampa Catholic High School and obviously Tampa, Florida. 4-star wide receiver, 6'3", 190. He's the 97th ranked player nationally, 18th wide receiver, and the 15th ranked player from Florida. And if you've watched any of these other recruiting videos that we've done, we've hammered on how talented and deep Florida is. So the 15th ranked player there would easily be a top 10 to top 7-ish guy in most other states outside of Georgia or Texas, maybe California as well. So great pickup again, back-to-back solid wide receivers. It'd be a great add to this offense. He was a 1,000-yard receiver as a junior. Stats aren't in on his season so far this year, but I would imagine he's only elevating from last year. Great hands. I'm going to say this, it's very surface level. I understand the huddle is obviously a highlight tape. So I'm not saying that's his entire game, but tons of great catches and one-handed grabs in the highlight tape, like body control. He can contort, he can twist, he can make very difficult catches, and he can make one-handed grabs as well, which I don't know how Dabo feels about those, but he's an electric athlete that's definitely going to open up this offense. Speaking of another receiver, this guy's a tight end, but he's a great addition to a tight end room that's going to need some guys to step up a little bit. Christian Benton Kerr. Definitely said that wrong, so my apologies. He's from Marion Central Catholic High School in Woodstock, Illinois. He's a 4-star tight end, 6'5", 240, 115th ranked player nationally, the 8th ranked tight end, and the 4th player in the state of Illinois. He's a great receiving threat. He lines up in the slot and sometimes at the X as well, but he's going to college to be a tight end, so he's obviously going to need to learn how to line up in line and get, some reps blocking as well. So, obviously probably not an immediate impact for them because he's going to have to, understand how to block. He's going to have to get comfortable lining up in line, not, off in the slot or at the X. So, not an immediate impact, but he's a great athlete to be adding to this team. Rounding out their top 5 recruits is Darian Mayo with the big hat swag. He's from Good Counsel High School in Olney, Maryland. 4-star edge. He's 6'7", 250. 143rd ranked player nationally, the 25th ranked D lineman, and which was confusing to me because on 247 he's classified as an edge, but he's ranked as D line. So if anything, I think that just says that he can play anywhere on the D line. It's not exclusively edge. But I was a little curious as to why he would be labeled as an edge, but then ranked as a D lineman. That didn't make too much sense to me. But 143rd nationally, 25th D line, 5th in Maryland. He has an 82-inch wingspan. That's essentially 6'10". So he's 6'7" with a 6'10" wingspan. He's 250. I don't know why the dude isn't going somewhere for basketball. He's just got to fill in the body a little bit more and refine his technique based on the evaluations. 6'7" is obviously huge. So 250, who knows what that looks like on him. But from the evaluations of people way more educated than me on this stuff, he's just got to refine his technique and get a little bit bigger, which I'm sure Clemson will be on top of that. Here is the interesting part. Clemson has no in-state commits. They have nobody from Florida. Now, obviously, they have 6 guys from Georgia and 5 from Florida. So that kind of, it doesn't make it as bad that they don't have any in-state recruits. But South Carolina isn't a state of bums. It's a top-heavy state for sure. After the top 10-ish, the talent does drop off from what a Clemson-level recruit would be. But South Carolina owns this recruiting class in state. They have 5 of the top 10 recruits, which includes 4 4-stars. So, like I said, after the top 10, yeah, sure, Clemson probably shouldn't be sticking their noses into that too hard. But to have nobody in the top 10 of your own state when you're Clemson doesn't make much sense to me. Dabo's always been good at recruiting, but this is alarming. And like I said, obviously it's not the end of the world when you're getting some top recruits from Georgia and Florida, but only a handful of those guys are 4-stars. So there is something that could be said about prioritizing the top talent in your own state before going for like the 50th ranked guy in Georgia or the 100th ranked guy in Florida. Like a lot of their, I don't want to say a lot, like a handful of their commits are. So, and I'm not saying that they didn't recruit these guys hard, but a lot of the South Carolina top recruits are like barely, it did, 247 has projections and stuff, and it says warm, cold, cool, all that stuff, crystal balls of where they're going to go. Clemson is involved in none of those. So it just didn't seem like they put that much effort into their home state where, it's top heavy. So it doesn't make too much sense to me. And then their point of emphasis was the D-line. Like I mentioned, they're losing 10 of their 11 starters. They added the second best linebacker, and they've got 4 commits on the D-line as well. One 4-star, or they have 4 edge commits, one being the 4-star I mentioned, and one being a 3-star, and then 2 D tackles that are 3-stars, and these 3 stars are high ranked, so they could receive bump ups. It wouldn't be super surprising, but there's no guarantees of anybody getting bumped up, but they are on that threshold of 3 and 4 stars. And then DB wise, they're bringing in 3 4-star safeties and 1 4-star corner. At the college level, you see DBs change positions from corner to safety a lot. And then there's also, the occurrences of wide receivers that switch over to DB as well. I know on a smaller scale, not much people would know this, but like Virginia Tech, Jalen Jones was a pretty decent wide receiver for us. Now he's at safety. And if you want to go to a bigger scale, Trayvon Diggs, current corner for Dallas, came into Bama as a wide receiver and then switched to corner. So it's not that they don't have anybody, but based on what they're losing and based on what they're bringing in, it's not too much talent replacing talent on an equal level. So there might be position changes. There might be a little bit more aggression from Dabo when it comes to the transfer portal. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I'm definitely not going to lock that in as a prediction. His thoughts on the transfer portal and NIL are pretty clear. And if you're a Clemson fan, don't call in to a radio station. That's what I'll say, or you will get your ass chewed out in front of the nation if you give any sort of negative feedback to the head coach making $12 million a year. We talked about this on the show yesterday, so I'm not going to get too much into it. This is a recruiting video. This is highlighting positives for the program, so I won't get too much into it. But your head coach has got to get his stuff together, and that's what I'll say. He's got to get. I think he's got to get the fan base back on his side, and dive into the transfer portal and NIL a little bit. I think the only guys he's gotten out of the transfer portal are like 2 backup quarterbacks or something. So to rebuild this defense, I do think he's going to need to dive in a little bit more. But that's all I've got for you today on the Clemson episode of the Recruiting Trail. This is every Wednesday. We get into multiple schools. So if you have interest in just recruiting in general, you know where to go. Every Wednesday, you'll have 2 or 3 new schools to dive into. Thank you, Sideline Sports Network, as always. Thank you to Totem Pole Nation, and thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If this is your first time seeing us, great to have you. Hit the subscribe. If you're returning and you still haven't subscribed, I don't know what else I need to do, but just hit the button. And with that, I say goodnight. I will be covering the South Carolina class in about 5 minutes, so you could stick around if you want. If not, hit it up whenever you want on the YouTube channel. And like I mentioned at the beginning, if you want merch, there's a link rolling in the ticker. You can go to that, get some dope stuff. Thank you very much. Have a good night.